or there's certainly two of them. I think it might just be the male and the female. No, there are a few more there. Just get into a position here. There we go. While we look at the male lion, then we'll just kind of get a handle on what's going on here, find out where the rest of them are. Kristen, you could say, well, of course, the evolutionary purpose of an emotion would be to attach to a youngster so that you look after it, so that it then obviously furthers your genes, because the more emotionally attached to it you are, the more likely you are to put an effort into raising it and protecting it, and therefore the more likely that cub is to further the genes that you've given it. There's Nkuhuma with the hole in his face. And so, you might say that it's not necessarily an emotion in the same... Well, you might say that human beings feel emotion for the same reason. So I think animals feel emotion, yes. Do I think the rest of the pride feels emotion? I think probably less so than the mother. Do I think that the males feel any emotion but for the lost cub? No, I don't. I don't think that they register it, to be honest. I think he certainly seems to be sleeping very comfortably, and if there is a lion who's done that to the cub, it is most likely this one. And what's so interesting is that he, of course, when he and Nat.Geo arrived with the pride 2 days ago, in fact, could have been Nat.Geo, I suppose, not 2 days ago, about, I think, 3 or 4 days ago when they killed that buffalo, this guy came up and greeted all of the females in turn, and some of the cubs, he had a long interaction with the cubs, and Nat.Geo sort of hung back a bit. And I think that was quite interesting. And something else I wanted to say about the emotional side of this and animals' emotions and what they think. I'm afraid I've forgotten what it was, but hopefully it'll come to me sometime. But that's a lovely discussion to have. Do animals feel emotion? Oh, I know exactly what it was. Kristen, the difficulty, of course, is that when we look at their faces, it's impossible to tell. And that's why I think there's this kind of disconnect, or that's why it's a bit difficult for us. Unless you know an animal intimately, it's difficult to know what they're feeling, of course, because we, as natural psychologists and natural readers of behavior, do so through the facial expression. It's why meeting somebody is so much more effective than reading an email from them. You can read from their faces exactly what they mean. You watch their eyes. Are they smiling with their eyes, or they're just fakely smiling with their mouths, and that sort of thing. Because we have such expressive faces, that's how we read emotion. Animals like this, animals other than the primates, they do not have the musculature in the face to show any kind of emotion. So that lion that we're looking at now, he can show you anger by putting his ears back. He can show you anger by baring his teeth, I suppose. Well, a dog would do that more than a cat would. But further than that, you don't know if he's looking sad. You don't know if he's looking tired or sad or depressed. That's just what his face looks like, and he doesn't have the muscles to change that. He doesn't have an expressive mouth. And so it is difficult to interpret what they're feeling. But if you know an animal intimately, like many of you who have cats and dogs do, you can just tell. There is an unspoken communication that they give you, and then you know whether they're sad or miserable or in need of some love. John, great question from you. And I think it's an interesting one. You say, do I think it's strange that the male yesterday sought out the female who was looking for her cub, even though she wasn't in estrus? Do I think that maybe he had some form of understanding of what she was going through, of what she was trying to do? John, wow, I don't know. I mean, she wasn't in estrus. Now, we're told that when a pride comes into, or when a lioness comes into estrus, she will seek out the male, and that the males, if the female isn't in estrus, they don't try and mate with them. So that's an interesting one. Now, that's the oldest female in the pride, and I'm not sure if she was the one looking for the cub yesterday. is very interesting. She's having a bit of a scratch. Might be a little bit of mange. That is a lovely picture though, isn't it? And if you wanted to ascribe an anthropomorphic emotion to that cat, you'd be saying, well, she's looking into the distance, kind of thinking of happier times almost. She almost looks nostalgic, doesn't she? Which of course is nonsense, because we feel nostalgic for that cub, and now we're just simply ascribing an emotion to her, which may or may not be true. I'm going to move forward so we can just get rid of that pole in the way there. That is the only disadvantage to having the roof, and indeed why it took so long for us to construct these roofs, is because the poles do get in the way, I'm afraid. Now there are another 2 lions through here, and I think maybe a couple of cubs. I don't know where the cubs are. Oh, there they are. Brian, is that okay for you? Or shall I angle better? I will angle better for you. For you, Brian, anything. How's that? Hopeless. I just don't want to get too close to the male, yeah? He's looking a little bit irritated, but he's okay now. There we go. The cubs are through there. All very cold. Now, do I think that they are affected by the loss of a sort of litter mate? Who knows? Who knows? Let's try and what is their human equivalent? I mean, they're now 5.5 months. Beginning, I think, middle of June, the first bunch were born. We'll call ourselves at the middle of November now. July, August, September, October, November. So they're 5 months old. The oldest ones, and the youngest ones 4.5 months or 4 months old. And well, we need to ask ourselves, that would be the kind of equivalent. I suppose a 1-year-old lion would be like just before puberty, say a 10-year-old human being, so half a year old, say a 5-year-old human being. Would a 5-year-old recognize the loss of a sibling? Absolutely. Would it feel an acute sense of pain and sadness? Absolutely it would. Would, therefore, these lions feel the same? I don't know. One can't help but think, especially in inclement, depressing weather like this, that perhaps they do. Perhaps there's a sense of where's Johnny? All right, we're going to sit here for a little bit and let's get Steph's impressions. The wizened old fellow, who's slightly younger than me, in the tent. Let's get his impressions on animal emotions. I just wanted to say, as this lion gets up, that's not a lioness, you see it's got a mane, Brian. I wanted to add to what Steph was saying there about non-verbal communication. Of course, that's exactly how these animals do it. And so I'm sure they do express some kind of information to each other non-verbally. And as he said, we have no idea what they're saying to each other. And as you look at that face, the only bits of expression that we read are the ears, and they're very clear to us. And I think that's probably A, because we do own domestic animals, and B, because we are somewhere deep in our genetic memory that ears forward posture of any animal indicates comfort, the ears back indicates threat, and so we're immediately on guard when an animal starts to put its ears back like that. So what's happened since you've been here? There's been huge action, everybody. That lion got up and moved 10 meters, 30 feet. Yes, that is right, 30 feet to where it now sits. And what it's doing is going to go to sleep there now. And I think it got up just to go and have a bit of a smell, because it looks to me like all 5 lionesses are here. And I think one of them is definitely an estrus, and perhaps he's looking to see if he can't mate. Now, on that subject, Amber Eyes, of course, has been sort of coming in and out of estrus for, I don't know, it seems to me like months. But she has failed so far as we can tell, to conceive. I don't know if she's here. Anyway, there's quite a lot of rain coming down. I'm just going to talk to Aubrey on the game drive quickly. Go ahead. As we look at Brian's very artistic shot there. Go again, Orbs. Hi swi lava ngopfu. I'm just listening to Aubrey, everyone. He's telling me that the young cubs have just been found at the quarry on the fire break. I'm going to quickly get Louise to get hold of Taylor and tell her that. Let's just quickly, Louise, can you quickly get hold of Taylor? All right, where should we go to the leopards, or do you want Taylor to go? I just don't know where Taylor is, everybody. So I'm just quickly going to give the location to Louise. They are on the fire break at the quarry just south of Treehouse Dam. So that is going to Louise, through to Taylor, and she is now going to drive at great speed towards that area. I think we'll spend another sort of 10 or 15 minutes here, everybody, and then I think we'll press on and see what else we can see. That lion looked up because Brian's tent is flapping a little bit. I'm going to quickly tie Brian's tent in place. There you are.
Thank you.
Oh, now here's a lovely question here. Zoe, we're talking about emotions, human emotions and animal emotions, and you say, have I ever noticed jealousy amongst any animals? Absolutely I have, and certainly amongst, I've seen it with dogs and cats. Have I seen it with cubs? Well, I don't know. We've certainly seen them fighting over milk and over teats and trying to kind of get some kind of, fighting with each other over that. Whether they feel jealousy over emotion or not, I don't know. Certainly male interesting emotion, and I've read a little bit about its evolution, and we all know the feeling of jealousy is very uncomfortable. It makes us feel very horrible indeed. And one of the reasons we have it, apparently, and you can certainly see it in the animal kingdom, is so that we are guarded against our partners. So I think you'll find that it's almost non-existent, for example, in a species like bonobos, where they have a kind of totally open sexual policy where everybody mates with everybody else. Whereas in a species where that is not the case, lions, human beings, jealousy is that much more pronounced. And it's apparently some sort of evolutionary response to us, to our desire to maintain a kind of a pair bond, that we don't want to be upset. Because if you didn't feel jealousy, you wouldn't really mind if the neighbour next door decided your wife was better than his wife. It wouldn't be a problem. But because we feel that sense of jealousy, we're very protective over that, and in turn, therefore, of our children. So there are certainly many different strategies to it, but the more open the sort of sexual system is, or the mating system is, the less that jealousy, I think, will be displayed. Sorry, Lou, you're going to have to go again with that. Cindy, very good question about when or how a female will go into estrus. Would she go into estrus on the back end of losing just one cub, or would she have to lose all of her cubs in order to go into estrus? I think the answer, Cindy, is very much that she would have to lose all the cubs. I don't think it would be just one. I think it would be all of them, because, of course, if she came into estrus now, let's say this female who's lost her cub or is about to lose her cub came into estrus now, it would be pointless for her to come into estrus again, because it would mean that she'd stop caring for the other two cubs. Resources would be diverted to new cubs, and that would be obviously disastrous for the ones that are living still. So no, they would only come into estrus once all of them were dead. So Taylor, just to keep you updated, is hieing her way towards those little leopard cubs. With any luck, we'll have them very soon, and that will be a very cheerful sort of, what should we say, a cheerful addition to this morning that has been a little bit somber. Brian and I were just saying when we were off air that the atmosphere here is one that is somber, especially with the black cuckoo calling in the background saying, I'm so sad. Kat, an interesting one again. I mean, I think we could talk about this for days, you say. Do I think there's a reason that the rest of the pride isn't lying with the cub until it passes? The reason is that it gives them no advantage at all. It gives them absolutely zero advantage to be there, lying in a place they have for a long time. They came hunting here, they brought the rest of the pride. That cub couldn't keep up. I don't know that there's and therefore they should leave it. It's simply a pragmatic approach to, we have to move, we need to go hunting, so we're moving out of this area. We've been out of here for too long. Anybody who stays behind is going to get lost there. That's why. So when we go on to the emotional side of things, I think that there's definitely a disconnect between what is cognizant and what is simply an inherent emotional response. So while there might be an attitude of somberness here, there's no, for an animal to spend time with comforting a companion that's going to die, it implies almost some kind of appreciation of death and what it means. It implies an appreciation almost that there is you've used the term passing, for example. I mean, that's very much a human term based on our religious outlook on life, which says that there is a hereafter. I don't think these animals think like that at all. The closer you get to primates, or the closer you get to human beings through the primates, then the more you see that kind of thing. And apparently with the chimpanzees, they will absolutely go and be around an animal that's about to die. Now, what evolutionary advantage does that confer? Well, what it does is it confers some kind of social bond to the whole troop. Is there any disadvantage to doing it? No, probably not. Is there a disadvantage to them doing it? Absolutely. They don't eat. They're unable to move away from places where it could be dangerous for the other cubs, and so they will take the pragmatic approach and leave because there's nothing they can do for that cub. So it's an interesting one. That's why they don't stay with the cub. They have no appreciation, I don't believe, of certainly not a hereafter. They definitely don't have an appreciation of the finality, I don't think, of death until it actually happens. It's quite interesting. That's where when you get into that narrow band of what's going on, I think that's where it becomes completely impossible to decide what they feel, what they think, and what's happening there. But it's such a lovely discussion, isn't it? And I think it's very interesting, Kat, that we as human beings, of course, use the term passing. We're very reticent to say died, dead. We say things like they've passed on, they've passed away. Well, you might say they popped their clogs if you particularly kicked the bucket. But Those err to the other side, of course. Passed on implies a sense of a hereafter, which, of course, I don't think that there is an appreciation of in something like the Nkuhuma pride. Wonderful discussion, everyone. Thank you. Fascinating indeed. All right, we're going to, I think, probably move on from here in the next 5 minutes, unless there is some burning desire from the general populace that we should stay here watching these flat kitties. Might come back and see them a little bit later. So let's spend another 5 minutes here, and then we'll push on and see what else we can find. Somber here indeed, however. And also cold. You know, the somberness that we are interpreting might simply be that these lions are cold. And Turtle, yeah, I have to agree with you in some ways. You say it's somber because we're feeling somber about things. We've had an emotional time at the last few days. And you say if we were happy, well, these lions would still be lying here. But instead of talking about the somberness and sadness and the emotion of the situation, we'd be saying, ooh, look, they look so miserable because it's cold and it's wet and it's rainy. And they're behaving just like cats. And we certainly wouldn't be ascribing all sorts of emotions to them as we are now. It's a very good point. Thank you, Turtle. Brian, I just must say at this stage, is extremely comfortable. He's got himself very nicely in his tent, and the southeast wind is having no effect on him at all. So we'll sit here until Taylor gets to the leopards, and then I think we'll press on. That's interesting. Look at that. Look at that. That lioness has been mating. See the biting on the back of the neck there? That's very interesting. That's from the male biting her on the back of the neck. Now, that's odd, because I thought she was the oldest female who's already got cubs. Something interesting going on there. Maybe that's just a bashing from the male, maybe just a fight. But those wounds are in exactly the kind of position that they would be if she'd been mating. Right, that's very interesting. We'll try and figure out what's going on here. In the meantime, Steph is in the tent still. Let's go and get his impressions on life and that sort of thing, his philosophizing, and then we'll head across to the leopards.